When you sat down, as we agreed on golf, we also agreed that something needed to be done with China, and that of all the things that Trump may have undertaken, this is one that you're friendly toward.
Yes, I am. You know, Joe, you and I can disagree whether Donald Trump is the American president that America deserves right now, but I'm absolutely certain he's the American president that China deserves right now, because it needed someone who was going to actually take on the trade relationship between the two countries that was misaligned. How did it get misaligned? Well, for so many years, when we bought their toys and solar panels, T-shirts, and tennis shoes, they bought our soybeans and Boeings. And occasionally it got out of whack, and we would come to them, and they'd buy more Boeings and soybeans. You know, two fundamental things have happened today, Joe, that I think have changed this equation. One is they are now competing head-to-head with our most cutting-edge companies. So China 2025 is not about soybeans. It's about artificial intelligence, new materials, aerospace, supercomputing. So one, they're now competing head-to-head with our cutting-edge companies. And two, all these companies, their technologies are all dual use. You know, things that will turn on your toaster will also, you know, turn on your missile. So why we had to take this on was, if they're going to compete with us the way they did before, okay, cheating on some of these things, when it's about AI and supercomputers and they can kind of protect all their companies, grow them to a giant size inside China, and then unleash them on the world, that becomes a strategic challenge to us, number one. And number two, the reason this is getting complicated is the Huawei story, that if they've got the world, you know, competing on the 5G space and we've got the 5G space, but Huawei now isn't just a company that you buy. It actually becomes embedded in your whole telecom communication system. If you don't trust their values, you can't afford to have Huawei in your system. We've got this whole problem now with our allies who are building 5G on the Huawei platform. So I say this, Joe, because this is going to get more and more complicated, I think, than people realize. So it isn't just about the trade imbalance. It's about the very change in the character of the trade between our two countries.
Isn't there a self-interest, though, on the part of the Chinese? There's an argument to be made that there's a self-interest for them to move towards a model where intellectual property is protected because they are developing their own technology that needs intellectual property, that they need to evolve to accept those values of being private sector companies as opposed to government-sponsored sectors, because a company like a Huawei might want to compete in the United States and actually sell products here instead of being banned potentially by executive order later this week. I mean,
I think it's a very interesting point, Melissa. And
the only
thing I would say is I've been hearing that story for about 20 years, you know, and it never quite crystallizes yet. But the point I think you're getting to, and again, the reason this is a hard movement, it's not just about the trade imbalance. It's about the character of what they want to sell and we want to sell, and therefore values matter. The difference between the values of their system and our system become really important when I'm not buying your toys and T-shirts, but I'm buying your telecom system, so you're going to be deep inside my economy. And therefore, if I don't trust you're going to use that telecom system in a fair way, but you may use it for espionage or whatever.
No trade deal is going to solve that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why this is hard. This is really hard. And but where I really agree with the president, it took someone to call the game. The game had to be called. You know, China got rich over the last 30 years, I think, using three things. One is hard work, smart investments in infrastructure, emphasis on education, delayed gratification. One basket. Second basket, cheating on WTO rules, stealing our intellectual property, non-reciprocal trade arrangements, all kinds of shenanigans. And number three, the U.S. fleet in the Pacific. Because our presence in the Pacific assured everyone around China that they could be dominated by China economically, but would not be dominated by them politically and geopolitically. And the problem was now these have really gotten out of whack, and somebody had to call the game. And I think Trump was the guy who did it.
This is going to be very, very difficult, as you say, and you are going to be on with Steve Bannon. I know you did read it was in the Washington Post as editorial. This is what was really interesting to me, is that he 6 understandings. One of them is Chinese state capitalism is highly, highly profitable for its owners, the CCP. And they've done this by stealing intellectual property, technology, and innovation of foreigners. And if they were not able to do it, Bannon says that in China, they'd be rapidly outcompeted by the Germans, the South Koreans, the Japanese, and especially the United States. They would not be the superpower or the heir apparent to the world hegemony if they weren't doing it in this fashion. So how can they possibly give this up?
Well, Joe, that's why I think it's going to be hard. Take, KUKA, the German robotics company they just bought. KUKA is probably the best robotics company in the world. I think a lot of people would say. China just bought it. Now imagine they take it back to China now. They protect it the way they protected Huawei or some of their other companies. They grow it on the China platform to a huge scale. And then they unleash it on the world, So, I don't know if I'd go quite as far as Bannon. There's a lot of, innovation in China. I don't know I'd go exactly that far, but surely they would not be where they are right now. Okay, and that's why, A, we had to call the game, but B, this is going to be hard, Joe. This goes really much deeper than just the trade imbalance. And we're at a moment now when we're in a world of Internet of People and Internet of Things, where everything's connected to everybody else, the difference between your values, Melissa, and mine start to become important, especially if I'm building my future on your telecom system.
Tom, is it possible to undo the catch-up that China has done? And is that the aim here? Because their innovation now does rival that of the US. Yes. They've already successfully stolen that IP. And on top of that, if the rest of the world isn't in agreement with President Trump's approach, can China not continue to make advanced gains because there is innovation in South Korea, Japan, and Germany? And China's investments in those countries is more important in a relative sense than it is to the US. So there's less incentive to play hardball.
So I happen to agree with the president's aims. I don't agree with his means. Had I been going about this, I would have signed TPP. Why was TPP important? First of all, it represented 40% of global GDP, particularly on the Asia-Pacific rim. And TPP was all about these issues: intellectual property, software protection, etc. I would have signed TPP.
What do you mean signed it?
I would have
been ratified because the Democrats.
Joe, I would have made it a top priority.
Would the Democrats have got along with him?
I would have made it a top priority.
They wouldn't go along with their own guy.
But let's forget whether, because Republicans, there are a lot of Republicans opposed to it too. I'm simply telling you, I would have made it a top priority.
You had a better chance of passing it with Republicans than you did with the Democrats.
I agree, and that's why I would have made it a top priority.
Otherwise, President Obama would have done it.
Right, and I would have made. I said because of that, I would have made it a top priority.
Okay.
I was a huge TPP fan.
Right.
Second, I would have gotten the Europeans completely on my side. I would not have wasted my ammunition on aluminum and steel tariffs with them. Then I would have called Xi Jinping, the president of China, and said, you send your 3 top negotiators to Hainan Island. I'm going to send my 3. We're going to do all this in secret. Nothing on Twitter, nothing in public, not going to try to embarrass you. But in private, I'm going to have there's 3 things you need when you negotiate with China: leverage, leverage, and leverage, okay? And in private, I'm going to have that leverage on my side. I'm going to nail you, but we're both going to come out and say, everybody's a winner. We're all going to know that I won more than you because I got more leverage. But that's how I would have done it. Doing this in public, in this way, hey, Xi Jinping has politics too. There's also Twitter in China. And this is turning into some big nationalist, who's got the biggest guns here. And that is not a way to address a really complicated, politically explosive problem.